Thank you all for being here for this very special conversation today about Black Lives Matter. You may or may not know that we have been for the past 2 months taking this time to speak every Friday at noon Eastern Time with my co-host Emma Bell, the actor and filmmaker, and we've been inviting stars and creators of a binge-worthy TV series. And because of the events that have been happening in America these past 2 weeks, we've decided to shift our attention to what is going on in America. And we've put together a lineup of very special guests that will speak freely one after another about how they feel about Black Lives Matter, what actions they've been taking for positive change, and also ideas to come together in times of disruptive change. This is a very important conversation. We have Laura Gomez, who's here, Lena Bradford, Abigail Hawk, Paul Haggis, Tobias Trevelyan, Gigi Gorgeous, and Wilson Morales. Thank you for being here. Thank you for taking this time. It's very brave of you to also speak in a time where, in a very sensitive time. And I really appreciate your presence and your input into what everybody's living right now. This is a space where we will listen to one another. This is not a regular format of a panel. So every person will speak for about 5 minutes, and hopefully towards the end, we will accept questions from our audience. I ask that you are mindful of your questions and comments, that you are respectful. Again, this is a safe space. And with all my love, we hope that this will be a great conversation, that if you have anything that you're against, please remove yourself. We are in a really safe space here. So please again, be mindful. Thank you again for your presence. I know that a lot of people are joining from overseas, from the Philippines. It's actually midnight over there. So I thank you for being here. I would like to start with Emma Bell, who has been, again, my co-host. She's an ally, what I call, and we've been hearing a lot this word these days, because yes, we have to recognize that the people that are here today, whether they're white or Latino, they are our allies. So that's why they are in this space. So I thank you, Emma, and I'll let you take the floor.
Thanks, Ingrid. And yes, thank you all for coming to be a part of this today. We are really, really honored to have our guests. They're all just incredible points of view and doing really wonderful things for this movement and in the world at large. I'm primarily here to listen and to learn from them, and also in general during this movement, to listen and to learn from those who have been in the battle trenches of this for centuries, and to use my privilege and my platform to amplify those voices. I want to encourage everybody on here, if you hear anything that challenges you or makes you defensive, know that this is a very challenging time for a lot of people, and really it's those of us who are not directly affected by what's happening in the world. It's really like not our time to defend ourselves. It's our time to listen to those who have not been defended in the past. That being said, what I'm trying to accomplish for this movement, in the little ways that I can do anything that I can, is I'm working hard. I'm volunteering to swing the state of Arizona to get this administration changed and try to make some political change in our world. So thank you guys again, all of our guests, for being here, and thank you all of you guys for participating. Ingrid, do you want to? I'll hand it back to you, and you'll introduce or the next person. No?
Yes, the next person is Abigail Hawk. So Abigail, please.
Yes. I officially unmuted myself. I'm still learning Zoom along with everything else. Hi guys, I just want to take the opportunity to say that I'm really honored that I'm here. This is something that is completely out of my wheelhouse. You know, when I decided to be an actor at 7, I certainly did not think that I would be doing more activism and social justice work and support. And I'm really privileged and honored that I'm able to be here and listen to all of my fellow panelists, but also, you know, hear your questions. You know, I'm pretty much the whitest person probably on this panel. I'm as white bread as you can get. Like, you cut off all the edges, that's me. I wear like SPF 100. But that being said, you know, I really am grateful that I have especially taken these past 2 weeks to just step back and listen and learn and unlearn. And, you know, I'm really at the phase of kind of reading the syllabus in terms of taking this class. Like, I haven't even gotten through the syllabus, so I'm at the very, very beginning and I don't have any answers. I believe that this movement is important because, you know, to borrow the very commonly seen phrase these days, all lives don't matter until Black lives do. And that's every Black life. That is trans Black life, that is gay Black life, that is cis Black life, that is Black cops. I think we need to have some really hard conversations. And, you know, I work on a police drama. So, you know, I've had a lot of conversations with myself these past couple of weeks about where I fit in all of this, what I need to be saying, what I don't need to be saying. And so I'm really trying to take this opportunity to just listen as much as possible and listen to Black female leaders and follow their lead. I've really been trying to listen to Rachel Cargle, especially on Instagram. She's a phenomenal teacher. And I discovered she's got this awesome bookstore called Elizabeth's of Akron. So I'm trying to put my money where my mouth is and support Black businesses, support small businesses, support Black female-owned businesses. You know, and that's it. I think, you know, we're at this point where paradigm shifts are uncomfortable. They're painful. We've got a lot of tectonic plate shifting happening. And I think we just have to sit in it and move through it and not be afraid to mess up and make mistakes. And that being said, you know, again, I just really am here to listen. So I'm excited to have this go forward. I'm glad I'm first because now I just get to sit back and listen to you guys and hopefully learn. So thank you guys very much for having me.
And our next person is Lena Bradford.
Hi. Hi.
Hi, good to see you.
Good to see you. That was a beautiful conversation that you had, darling.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Can you share with us how you feel right now about this movement? I know you wanted to especially address Black trans lives matter, and you've been an activist for a certain number of years. Can you share how you feel about this and what actions you've been taking to make positive change?
Yes, and first of all, again, thank you for having me, sweetheart. You know that I absolutely adore you and the Chelsea Film Festival. And thank you for honoring me last year with the other two beautiful young ladies. That was pretty magnificent. I think that this is a wonderful, amazing time for us all to be proactive, and for us, now that there's no more white noise, you know, everybody's basically in their home, you know, so there's a moment of empathy and people really listening, you know, because this is nothing new. This has been happening forever, you know, so the fact that people are now able to focus and hone in on the fact that other people have been hurting for a very long time, and that it's not just about one life matters more than the other. Like she said earlier, it's a particular targeted demographic that's being harmed right now. And this is why it's important that we focus on Black lives, trans lives. You can't also get to pick and choose within races, because guess what? The cops don't see a difference. You know, you're Black, then this is what we're seeing that's happening. So I think that also within the Black community, there needs to stop being that separation, you know, you cut me, I bleed, you know. So at the end of the day, being down with who you are and respecting your brothers and your sisters is where we all need to come together from. And learning that, you know, like I loved the quote that you mentioned earlier. I'm sorry, how do I say your name, darling? The young lady who was speaking earlier, Miss Hawk?
Abigail.
Abigail, sorry, Abigail.
That's okay.
Sorry. The phone is so far away and I got this light in my eyes, I can't see. I'm sorry. Abigail, nice to meet you, by the way. That what Abigail said, she said a really great thing that I think it's really important for us to remember. She's like, I have to learn how to learn, and I have to learn how to be unlearned. You know what I mean? And that's so smart, because when you think about it, none of us come into this world knowing about prejudice or any of that stuff, or hate or anything. That stuff is all taught at home or wherever it is that you're learning it from. So if you're learning this at home, guess what? It can be untaught. And there'll be that special moment or that special person who somehow resonates with you. And I think that it's always very important that when you're talking to people, never to have to raise your volume and cuss at them. You know, there's a way of just, one, killing with kindness, but also just finding out where they're coming from, because they'll walk away from that moment and they'll be like, you know what, a year from now, a month from now, that, wow, that person was really, really cool with me and could have completely gone in and destroyed me, but they didn't. You know, you only set people further back in where they are by doing something like that. So I think it's important to listen. It's important to get out of your own backyard and realize that there are other different cultures that don't have it the way that we've seen other ones have them.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And our next guest is Tobias Trevelyan.
Good day, everyone. It's very interesting to listen to everyone. How do I feel about all this? Well, first off, Abigail, you know, I've been on Blue Bloods a couple of times. I've been on these crime dramas a few times, and trying to figure out how you fit in your workspace and how these stories are projected out there is very important. So now you have a space, a place where you can speak up in the writer's room and discuss and give a different point of view and adjust what's happening with some of these storylines. Because I've been on the show quite a few times. I've been on Chicago PD. I've been on all these shows. And my sister say, did you die? I like, no, I didn't. But that's one thing. But you know, I applaud you for that. I'm, you know, when I took on this journey of years ago, being proactive in the community, being proactive socially is part of my responsibility as an actor. So, you know, I'm glad that you're, you know, stepping into that space now, but you do have a voice, you do have a platform and a responsibility that belongs to you and all of us as a whole. There's a lot going on. I have a lot to say about it all, but, you know, actively, I've been doing a lot of community work. We've been feeding people that are in need. I currently live in the city of Newark, New Jersey, where the mayor, Ras Baraka, who is the son of Amiri Baraka, who was an activist, actor, community leader person, has been very active in how we been flattening the curve, how we've been able to help people that are in need, from small businesses to people who need money as far as food, been delivering. We have a partnership with HelloFresh where we've been able to get out and, you know, feed the people weekly who need it, elderly. And, you know, using my platform, social media, jumping on Zooms, things of this nature are ways that I've been able to actually help mobilize this. Physically, we've been in protests and stuff where we actually, you have people that are protesting in a non-violent way, but then you have people that are trying to do, looting and rioting. And this is only in certain areas and stuff, but we've been able to organize and mobilize to prevent those things that happen while we're in the crowd, to make sure that it stays peaceful, to make sure that people are not being stirred to ignorance and dumb stuff. So these are things that, how I've been active and been able to, use myself physically and my platform and my voice during this time. Where do I start with all this? I have a lot to say about, how I feel about the movement, how I feel about where we are as a space. I think this is really important. The real truth to us as Americans is for us to really have open dialogue, stop sweeping shit underneath the rug, because that's the problem. We keep constantly sweep stuff under the rug, and we don't teach our children the truth. And being that we don't give them a real living platform with honesty to teach them the truth about, everything, and allow them to decide on their own and live, that's where a lot of the issues come in. Ignorance, has a lot to do with it too. But, I just want to, in a quick overview, to look at the narrative that's being constantly spun. We went from a, fear space, and this is just me, fear space, to a, we're not going to call it murder. We're just going to say this was a bad situation, to, violent rioters, violent protests, violent rioters, to, you know what, we're going to call this play out. There is systemic racism. Where do we go from here? This is a play. I see it clearly. I don't know what the other foot is when it's supposed to drop. Maybe this is a, new space we're heading into, but the movement has caused has caused the narrative to be spun faster than they anticipated. The pressure that's being put on and the alliance between people is very impressive. And I'm not sure where we're heading, but, I'm not fooled by the basic rhetoric that I hear. So that's just where I'm at. But I'm glad to see everyone coming together. I'm really happy to hear everyone collectively wanting to talk about this. And that's the very beginning, as my one of my mentors would say, it's the very beginning. And that's what it is. That's what it is. Let's get it started.
Thank you, Tobias. Our next guest is Laura Gomez.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here among such a great group of people. And it's interesting, Paul, you kind of, I'm gonna take up on what you just said, because you connected something, and also what Tobias said before, I'm gonna connect them both. I've been very vocal about narrative and storytelling, and the power that storytelling has in the place that we are now. Fascinating to see how Trump becomes such a, I don't know, an igniter. And of course, it makes sense. We have a narcissist in chief and a liar and so many other things. But I think we forget how, first of all, there's a whole system behind this. And this is not a coincidence. I always say, like, look, yeah, Trump is whatever he is, but he's one piece of the puzzle. And and the fact is that because he's a narcissist and we are being gaslighted and being told that we are not seeing what we're seeing, it kind of brings this anger. But in a funny way, I feel that what this virus, I call him the virus, is bringing is just the cancer that we already had. This is not a new thing. It's funny because what I noticed is, like, this guy, we were opposed nothing. We had, a Black president that gave us a sense of hope, which was, for me, I think it was a necessary symbol for the world. But I guess Trump just came to remind us that that doesn't mean that the whole other issues don't exist. So we've had a narrative and storytelling in this, not only in this country. I come from, I'm Dominican, and I come from a country of, colonialism and the history that we've been told, and the antagonism with our brothers and sisters from our next door country, which is Haiti, also based on narrative and storytelling. And so what I noticed is that we want to simplify what's been happening for centuries with these past 4 years, when the fact is that this is not a, like Paul said, it's not a one party issue. In fact, I do notice all the time, I'm like, we are being gaslighted by liberals all the time, by the fact that we are in better places. And I think Trevor Noah said it so beautifully when he mentioned years ago, I think he talked about how can you fight what you haven't acknowledged. And being an outsider myself, and I've been here for 20 years, so now I have like half of my life, and I have 2 countries, but I have the ability to see this country from outside. So I'm kind of like inside, but it gives me the perspective of seeing this country has never dealt with their underlying issues. You are not aware. If you're not aware that you're sick, how can you battle your sickness? And I find it interesting that, and of course it makes so much sense, that it took a pandemic to make us go inside and be introspective. And if it hadn't been for this world crisis bringing up the inequalities that we are seeing in the world, which is not, it's a matter of the 1%. And I know we have so many layers. We're dealing with white privilege and whatever, but we're also dealing with the 1% privilege, who are the ones setting the tone for the storytelling that we've been told. We're working for them, we are sacrificing for them. We are accepting less of, because we are not necessarily are in this group, but as a whole, the myth of the trickle-down economic, the richer this guy is, I'm gonna get some of that. So the myth of capitalism, the myth of all of this, which I believe has been handed from generation to generation. And sometimes that includes our arts, the theater and the movies, and how this industry particularly works. So for me, for instance, I had the honor and privilege of working in a show like Orange is the New Black, that it's ironic because it comes from a place of stereotypes in a way. But then the fact that this opportunity was used to then humanize the characters behind this, and it became a world phenomenon. Now, why it became a world phenomenon became sort of an obsession for me, because I realized what was happening. I mean, I was going to places that were probably I could have never imagined. I had kids who were 16. I would tell them, like, why are you watching this show, with their grandma, and they're like Jehovah's Witnesses. And then I'm thinking, whatever, or, white people, Black people, like there were so many countries in the world that I'm watching from, I don't know, Transylvania. So it was like the craziest thing. And I was thinking, why? Because we were telling universal stories, and there was all this universe, and people could connect to different characters who they particularly loved. But at the same time, they were being exposed to other stories that they would otherwise never heard of. And I know people who are very much, anti-gay or whatever, but they were watching this show, and I thought, in some way or another, they are humanizing these characters, and then this is changing the narrative, because I had people telling me I never thought about it that way. And I think we forget that education has been taken away from people. Education is a freaking privilege, and where it shouldn't be. And so for me, you ask what type of things I'm doing. I'm always connecting with the younger generation. And I feel like, oh my God, it's because that's when you're a teenager, I go to high schools a lot, and I go to speak to kids a lot, and especially underprivileged kids. And it's so fascinating to see how curious they are, how open also to changing the narrative. And one of the things that I've been very vocal about also, and also through my writing, is diversity. I'm just observant of how nowadays, now we have this platforms being mindful of the Black Lives Matter. And I, as much as I appreciate it, here's a Black filmmaking. And I see it, and it's a few, you know, it's not enough. And it's usually for Latinos, it's like crossing the border. And for Black people, it's the slavery. And I think those are great stories that we should be telling. But you know what? I've been very an advocate for, can we tell our own stories that are universal stories? Because I feel like every time we're just, I've written a few pieces, I wrote a play and I've submitted it. And I had great responses in the readings from women who felt, especially women, because it's about a woman who doesn't want children and she's married and her husband does, and it's creating a conflict in marriage. And I've been told like, well, it's not Latino enough. And it's like, it's just, she just happens to be Dominican, but it's just a story that we go through. So it can only be seen through a specific type. What you're telling me is you know, is it a maid or is it crossing the border? Is she crossing the border and doesn't want a child? And I'm like, no, she's good. You know, she's a photographer and she's doing good. No, something's not clicking. So I've been very an advocate of things like that. Like I'm watching Insecure. I don't know who here is. I'm a big fan of What Is Erased doing. Yes. And I freaking love it because it's like this story of a group of people, specifically, you know, these women who are having their ups and downs and just fucking up their lives and picking up the pieces and just being. And they don't have to explain their race, they're just being. And then there's this representation of Black lives, and in a way that is not stereotypical. They just happen to be Black, you know, and while at that, celebrating their culture. And I remember watching an episode recently, and my friend and I were like teenagers, like, oh my God, Lawrence and Center. And it was beautiful to see these Black bodies, you know, having this beautiful sex scene that we don't get to see because it's just, and it happens to me when I see other films where it's like diversity. We only get to see these people being a maid, you know, if I'm a Latina, a prostitute, or in prison, you know. And I've, as much as I loved Orange, and I do, I think what we did, it has so much power. I had to tell my manager after the show, I may work less, but no maid auditions and no prisons, because that's what I was getting, mostly prisons. Like it was a straight offer, and I'm like, I said no, I don't care not to work. And that was one of the issues. Then comes the patriarchy in this another layer, but that's what I'm advocating for. I think I'm a film junkie. You know, I love films throughout history. I see what's happening now with HBO Max removing Gone with the Wind, and I'm like, you know, I don't want to erase history. And whatever opinions people have about this, I respect. I just think that this is also a sign of evolution where we are. What was problematic for me was not that film, was the fact that the first Black woman who won an Oscar was not allowed to sit with the cast when she received her first Oscar. That's what's problematic to me. I want to see her performance, you know, and I want to see what was problematic about those times and be able to fix it now. The fact that we want to solve the problem with the movie instead of with the industry, the fact that we don't see like, no, it's not that, you know, it's not that just like Brad forced a kiss on Scarlett, it's that we're still doing that through storytelling. So that's kind of where I'm focusing on, is the power of storytelling, is the power of diversity in our productions. Is happening in the theater community. There was a whole theater group of people who we were signing the petitions because the voices are mostly, again, universal stories are told through white people, and then we have niches and specific subjects that we are allowed to talk about. And I'm always looking around me, and it's like, is my universe diverse? Because that's what makes me a richer person and a better person, is the fact that it's a gift to be surrounded by diversity, both in your life and in your work.
Thank you, Laura. Next guest is Wilson Morales.
So, having listened to everybody here, the thing I say to myself is, and I run a website called blackfilm.com. And for the last 20 years, I've been promoting the work of artists, whether they're in front of the screen or behind the screen, and telling their stories, because I don't think there's not enough outlets that tell our stories. Some of them are independent, some of them are studios. But I think, if you got a project, people should know about it. But with what's happening now, and as I'm hearing everybody talk, I said to myself, it's not a question about how did this happen. The question is, why is it still happening? This thing, what's happened with George, with Breonna, we've seen deaths. Some of them have been populated through the media, some of them haven't. It's been happening for centuries. And the two words that I think about are systemic and humanity, and I think it may start off with the system, like what's in place that people are abiding by it, and could it be changed? And then there's humanity. I think, all of this is happening because people have lost their sense of humanity as far as the law is concerned. And, it's not about the one person who did something to George, but what did the other guys do? Like at what point did their humanity stop? Which is why we're here, and today throughout the day, I'm watching this news about what's happening with Breonna, and how they walked in her house and so forth. And it's, you have the guys, the cops who are operating by what they learned through the system. And then because of that, they lost their sense of humanity. And I think about what I can do is, I'm not saying stay in my lane, but what I do is I promote the stories that's out there. Obviously, in the last few days, we've seen a lot of studios and networks putting a lot of Black documentaries and Black films that we should be watching. Some of them are being made for free for the public, so that way, in case they don't want to charge anybody, in case people do not have the money. I've been getting calls recently as far as what do I think about Gone with the Wind. I feel like, hey, I think Laura said, you can't change history. Maybe you can tell people, give some context for those who did not see it back then, so that way they can understand why those characters are what they are. And then like what you said with Hattie McDaniel, she wins the Oscar, but she's not allowed to sit with her castmates. You look at back then, you're like, where is their sense of humanity where no one said anything, and we're always here, every, before Black Lives Matter, there was another group. It had to be called something else, there was always group. It's question is how big is the incident that we all are getting involved like now? Like everybody's talking from all ends of, the earth. It's not just an isolated US thing, it's happening all over the country. We can go back to Mandela and apartheid, and the way I can promote it is through telling the stories, letting, promoting what's out there to let people know, because the only stories we can tell are the stories that we are experiencing, and unfortunately, we're getting the Selmas and the Hate U Give, and we can't always be imaginative in terms of like the action films and stuff like that, because we don't have that many to talk about. And for the most part, they're not greenlighting those stories. At the end of the day, as I'm watching TV or I'm watching any other stories, it's like, okay, who's in the room? We need to definitely increase diversity in all aspects, so that way when things are being discussed. And just yesterday, I got a call and by a local station asked me, do I think any of these procedural shows like a Blue Bloods and Law and Order and Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and I was asked, should we be advocating heroes on these shows? And I said, I don't know the right answer. I think, it comes down to the stories and episodes that they're writing. I know I'm a fan of all these shows. I guess through Blue Bloods, I watch it, I guess, every night now that they have it on IO9. And it goes down to the writing and the stories that they're telling, and I think obviously it was a good thing that they canceled Cops and Live PD, because that they don't always tell the story, and people who watch those shows are seeing a certain perspective and learning through that, because you're not showing all sides. And I think, the media plays a big factor as far as how we treat others, and I think it goes down to the stories that are being written, the characters that are being portrayed, the lessons that are being taught through these episodes. And the question is, it goes back to who's in the room, who's greenlighting it, who's, there's got to be a consensus of is this right or wrong? You know, and that's what we're getting now. Now everybody's going back and saying, you know, should this episode have aired? You know, I think there was a show, Little Britain, where they've now taken out a couple of the episodes where one of the characters was in blackface. But the question is, well, how did he get to that point in the first place that he did it for at least 3 or 4 episodes? You know, so like, you can't rewrite history. You could just kind of only move forward as far as what can we do now? You know, as everybody's protesting in different areas. The question is, okay, what's going to become of this protest? And it comes down to government, you know, making some sort of law, education, definitely what people are learning in school, and each other in terms of parents and teachers and kids, you know, teaching each other about humanity, how to not look at someone differently, whether they're Black, white, or Latino, you know, or trans, or, you know, whatever gender. You know, I think we have to decide, okay, we have to treat each other equally so that we're not in a situation like this again, you know, and this is not going to stop. I keep thinking this is only a Band-Aid, because there's going to be another incident. You know, we've been here over and over again from the 40s to the 50s. You know, there's always an incident. The question is, how big is the incident that we need to be here, all of us from different aspects, to talk about it? Because if you go out and read any paper from any state, you're going to find an incident that wasn't highly promoted, maybe on page 26. And it takes a bigger audience to know about it. With what happened to George, who's not in New York, and that happened in Houston, what happened to Breonna, you know, and you know, the only thing I can do from my end is promote, at least through my audience, blackfilm.com. It's like, hey, here are these movies you should see. Here are these films that are being promoted that you should take a look at. I've been doing it as it is when they're coming out, but I guess now everybody's focusing on, you know, all the networks are giving you examples of stories you should have seen already, or if not, take a look at it, you know, to get an idea as far as how people are being treated. But I think it goes back to learning and educating ourselves about humanity. That's where it starts, because whatever law, whatever job you're in, and if you're in law enforcement, we're all humans first, you know, and we have to understand what that means.
Thank you, Wilson. And our next guest, and last but not least, is Gigi Gorgeous. We want to hear from Gigi about how she feels about Black Lives Matter. And I know she also has been very vocal about Black Trans Lives Matter, and what action she's been taking to make positive change and ideas to come together in times of disruptive change. So thank you, Gigi, for being here.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I had a little trouble with the Zoom, which never happens, which is a little embarrassing, but you live and you learn.
It's okay. You're perfect timing, actually.
Great. Okay. I mean, for me personally, being a white trans woman, coming from privilege, I've really found this time super important for me to educate myself, to, you know, look at everything that everyone's posting, and also getting out there and protesting. I went to my first one last weekend, and I'm going to my second one this Sunday. And it is something that is so special to me. It was a little scary. I will be 100% real. Going out there in Hollywood, you know, I obviously didn't want things to turn too crazy. I love a peaceful protest, but it was extremely peaceful, and the turnout was incredible. So for me to be a little insignificant part of that, it just felt so good. So this Sunday, I'm going, I think, from West Hollywood all the way to the edge of Hollywood. And I can't wait to just be out there, feel the energy, of course, with my mask on, and, you know, just get into it. But I think for me, social media has played a huge part in the Black Lives Matter movement, especially since we're all quarantined. I think just seeing people's stories, reading people's point of views, and really just educating myself about police brutality. Like, I knew it was there, but for me, it's like, I need facts. I need to talk to people. I need to get into it, because I feel like for the most part, it was over my head. And now I think I'm in the trenches with it. And I think with Pride along this month, I think with that, we all need to march together and just, you know, fight for injustice.
Thank you, Gigi.
So, you know, when we say defund the police department, you know, financially, the issue, you know, we're talking about a couple of things here. We're talking about police brutality and we're talking about racism. So let's just make sure that we're clear about, you know, what we're saying here, because it's a few things that circulate in this equation and things get a little, you know, convoluted a little bit. But anyway, when you think about the taxpayer, us, when you think about the bottom line, we pay for police brutality. The way we pay for police brutality, police officers are on duty. He's a public servant. While he's on duty, he does what he does. That's on our dime. We're watching as it happens. We pay for that. Now, what happens? There's money that is put aside for all states for lawsuits against police brutality. They know this already. The money that's put away for police brutality is paid by us. They have lawsuits that are already in place. They know that each city has, you know, different type of death rate. They say, oh man, you know, so many people have been killed under our watch this year. We're gonna make and they have a cap for that. They have a cap for how much money they get per year for the lawsuits in police brutality. What happens when you have these lawsuits, you have, and this goes into financials, you have these financial liability companies that issue insurances. What happens in those places, we, the people, pay for the premium of these insurance policies. You understand? Now, when the cap is reached at a certain point and they don't have enough money, what happens? They go to look, the city, the municipality, they go to look for more money. And where do they go to find the more money? They go and find the money in the bonds. And where the bonds come from? They go to the community, to the people to say like, yo, I need this amount of money. And over a course of time, I'll pay you back a percentage of the money. And within the 5 to 10 years, I'll give you back your entire money that you put up. That's how bonds work. So when you think about defund the police, when you look at it like an illegal hit in the NFL, there's no incentive for a cop, even when you go into a courtroom, who's paying for that? We pay for that. So there's nothing that moves them at all to stop what they're doing because they're not paying for it. It's not coming out of their pocket. So the defund the police is, I guess, just the saying, this thing, but it's real. Most of the underlying issues that we suffer from in this country is a disparity as far as finances, as far as money, as far as healthcare, these things. Why certain group of people can't advance because it's systemically keeping them down. And then when we finally do get a chance to advance in history, when we built the Black Wall Street, when we had a community of leaders in Rosewood, what did they do? They came in and they slaughtered the whole community, murdered the people. We didn't want anything. We did it on our own. So just like, give an idea, if we wanted to have people accountable for stuff, you will have to think about if a precinct or state has so many incidences that would happen, that would affect their pension. That would affect their salary, and not just the pension of one person, the pension of the entire group, because they're good cops. I'm not saying that they're bad cops at all. That's not what I'm trying to say. What I'm saying is when you start hitting people financially, like an illegal hit in football, like if someone's coming across the middle and a free safety spears a defenseless wide receiver, he gets taxed. He gets a letter that Monday from the commissioner. These type of incentives, these type of ideas, it's not an idea, that's a fact of what it is. So this is just a real broad stroke from where I'm standing and try to deliver to the people of what is meant by defund the police, because it don't matter. You can talk all day you want. It doesn't matter until it's financially a setback. And then, and if you want, when we go into voting this new president to come in, these are the things that need to be addressed. Not just we want to end police brutality and da da da. Yeah, but how? How? Those are the ideas. That's the thought process of one way of really dismantling or readjusting how this works. Yeah. One real quick, I'm sorry. One more thing. One thing to also look at is that the prescription for the inner city, the prescription for, and we gotta cut this white privilege thing, because white privilege, it's like saying, something good about it. It's not really privilege what we're saying. We're saying that it's an inequality, or, this white privilege thing is not, it's worded incorrectly.
Narrative bias.
Yeah, so, that's just that it's like, it's not a positive thing that we're talking about. So let's not, let's get that right. But what I'm saying is also to understand that the people that are in need, and us as a whole moving forward, we have to understand that it's two different types of prescriptions. People that are in the suburbs, and just even now, like dealing with the pandemic, yeah, you have more room, you have more space, you have, you have more space to do things. People that are in the city, people are on top of each other, it's more crowded. So when you just even think about a pandemic wise, the prescription to just open it up is just, the prescription is different. So when we're talking about how we're healing as a whole together, we have to address certain areas, because it's not the same prescription for everybody. It's just not, because we have different issues, different problems. So just think about that as you open up.
I wanted to also mention something about the whole police situation, is that it's important for us to vet these people before getting them into the blue situation. So often, we need the heads, we need the armor. We also need people who are mentally right for their blood type to be in this position, And also, if we do defund, sometimes you do have to hit people in their pockets in order to make them say, oh, okay, maybe I do need to reevaluate this. But you won't have that problem if you're vetting the people to find out why exactly they want to get into it. Growing up, we all hear, oh, I want to be a police officer, I want to be a fireman. And they can tell you the reason why. I bet most of these kids who had that dream in the get-go no longer know what that is all about. It's a power thing with most of these people who, in any type of training as a police officer, do they tell you to kneel on a man's head? That makes absolutely no sense to me. So we need to get back to basics on why it is these people are even getting into these positions. And, if we have to hit them in the pocket, that's what we got to do.
I think that's really well said. Does anyone else want to jump in on that? Sorry, I'm hard to keep track.
Did you hear that?
Yeah, go for it.
Law Project.
The Grassroots Law Project. Yeah, to all of our guests, if you have specific websites or books or movies or anything that you think might be educational for people or interesting for people, I know Tobias has already put in some things. Tobias, I think that was just to me, so I'm going to go ahead and copy it. But it's the Grassroots Law Project. That's from
please post it in the chat.
Make sure it's to everybody. If you guys have any suggestions for people, just go ahead and write it in the chat box, because I think I have found that during this time for me too, that whole idea of unlearning certain biases that I've had has been really instrumental. Seeing people post what books or stories or movies or documentaries was important to them, and I've watched them and I've learned a lot of things. You just touched on something, Lena, and I think a lot of you have also touched on these things as well, which is that it's really not just the police. There's a lot of other things that need to be changed, and part of that is education. And when you talk about the vetting police, police training in this country is abominable. If you look at other countries in the world, they have 3 years of training in order to do what they're doing. And you know, it is more divided into not every person's an enforcer. Some people are strictly there for mental health issues. Some people are strictly there for abuse issues. So that is like a very easy way to defund the police as we know it and give resources towards educating them so that they have a longer time of training, so that they actually, you know, prepared in these situations to do things in a way that actually helps the community that they're supposed to be serving. Along those lines, is there any other like aspect of
we have some questions here that I want to be very conscious of time, because I know that some of the guests have a very short time frame. So I want to go jump into a question that is for Gigi. That is a YouTube. She started on YouTube, and she is a YouTube star, and she has a very strong following on social media. And there's a question for her asking, how do you think social media has impacted the Black Lives Matter movement? And she's been very, very vocal about it. So.
Yeah, I saw, I believe Chrissy asked that, and I was like, oh, or Cindy asked that, and I wanted to jump in. I think simply social media can be such an amazing place, just because, personally speaking, when I started, I found no one around me within my community that was like me. I had to jump on YouTube, find one like-minded person, and it lit a fire under my ass to just be myself and put myself out there. And it's like, look what that's done for me years later. So I feel like Black Lives Matter has definitely been affected by this, because in a positive way, because you look on your Instagram and it's almost like all the selfies, all of the, you know, thought pictures, all of the silly stuff has stopped. Everyone is posting meaningful shit. And you scroll through your timeline and your Explore page, and it's just all facts, all pictures of trans Black women who have been killed, you know, protests going on, meaningful stuff. And I think that this is a really great time. And I know I personally feel really hopeful about the world, given how crazy 2020 has been, that we're going to come out on top for this, because I think a lot more people are fighting because of social media that wouldn't have been.
I mean, what wasn't working for us before was yesterday, and today is a better day. I think we've always known that, you know, prejudice has been in this country, and it's wonderful that, you know, the Orange Cheeto is how I address the person in the White House, is that, you know, one thing that I can say that's been fantastic about him being there is that, like I said, we've known that prejudice has been there, but all these people are coming out of the closet and they can never go back again. And they've been getting pinpointed, and we're able to bring them down and not allow this to continue to keep going on. So the fact that everybody's now being vocal about it, also seeing the new generation being proactive about this and with voting, is the best time to be alive. We can't look at this as a negative. It's only a positive, because guess what? It can no longer go back.
Yeah.
Mm. Thank you. That's a great thing to close the conversation.
Love you too, Lena.
Yeah, Lena and Gigi are best friends. Is there anything else that you want to share? I'm sorry for interrupting Emma. Emma, this was not intentional. I'm really, really conscious about the time for everyone, because we have a lot of guests. And I would just want to if you'd like to share a last word. We can't go over all the questions because we would stay here the entire day, and some people have to go protest. We have to do our actions. So I'd love to close now with some positive words.
I want to address something quickly, and that'll be my closing statement. And it's about what I spoke about, diversity. And someone, I think Lana Young, talked about this. Yes, diversity, it does not equal equality. And I think it's one step. And one thing that I have to add to what I said is, it's also not just the faces, but the people. We have to be in positions of taking decisions. Right? I believe that diversity also has to be behind the scenes, because if a story is told through one point of view, then there's nobody else challenging you and that, well, that's not how I see it, you know. And that's why right now we have these positions, or Latinos can only, the Latino stories are where we're crossing the border, right? Otherwise, and Black stories are only slavery. And those are specific people making those decisions. But there's nobody else saying, we also want to see a love story that has nothing to do with, my story has nothing to do with those specific subjects. And so that's how we also, through storytelling, are telling a younger generation, it's making it, or trans, like Posey, I think of Pose, I think of Insecure, I think of Hentified, I think of these shows that are now happening that are not through the same narrative, but also opening up the diversity move through people behind the scenes. And I feel it's the same with the news, because we also have the same narrative of the Mexican man, immigrant, undocumented, not undocumented, they said illegal, I've seen this, who raped a beautiful white woman, and it's horrible. I'm a woman, for Christ's sake, the moment, but it's like they push this narrative. And the moment you see a Mexican person, your reaction is this. It's subconsciously taking these stories into our everyday lives. And we have all these prejudices because we've been indoctrinated through TV and films and all these things. Like back in the day, the Native Americans were the bad guys, and all of these things that we have to evolve from and make it more our stories with people of color also being part of the story and decision making.
100%.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else want to say some last words or?
I do. Can I say something?
Yes, please.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you, everybody. I appreciate everyone to be tuning in. We got to keep this dialogue going. But check out my film, Equal Standard. It really deals with, it's based, I mean, Wilson could tell you more about it than I could at this moment, but it's a powerful film, and it deals with police and community relationships, and very, very proud of it. And check it out. Watch. It's called Equal Standard. It's on Vimeo. I put the link up there.
Will do.
Ingrid, thank you for putting this together. I think this is fantastic, and we should definitely do this more often.
Well, thank you for accepting my invitation. I appreciate that.
Of course.
Thank you.
You're beautiful.
You too, gorgeous.
Well, I want to thank you all. Thank you to our audience members for tuning in today. Thank you, Lena Bradford, Abigail Hawk, Laura Gomez, Tobias Truvilian, Paul Haggis, Gigi Gorgeous, and my co-host Emma Bell for being part of this very important conversation. And thank you to everybody in the chat. We have a lot of thank yous, and everybody has been really mindful, and this was an honor to have you on. So I hope to continue the dialogue. As we said, it's not just here in the virtual world, but also in the real world. Mm-hmm. So I hope to see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Everyone.
Bye, guys. Thank you so much.